The Jeremy Swayman Boston Bruins stalemate has taken a whole new twist and turns this morning, with the Bruins having a press conference and essentially calling out the netminder. We'll discuss what the Bruins had to say, what could it lead to, and how it impacts everything in negotiations coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we had a pretty significant update in the Jeremy Swayman Boston Bruins stalemate, standoff, whatever you want to call it here. Negotiations that we know have had a big gap. They've not gone well. The player remains unsigned, therefore not in training camp. And, well, we're getting far enough into training camp now that we're at a point where he's very much likely not to be with the team to start the season. The Bruins had a press conference this morning and made some pretty surprising remarks. Now, depending on how you look at this and how you feel about what the rumors are around the contract offers and where negotiations are at, you might either side with one or the other, but either way, this is not something that you normally see a team coming out and publicly making remarks like this publicly for a contract negotiation that's not going so well. So, first of all, the Bruins, you don't see teams just ultimately calling press conferences in the middle of training camp like this. So essentially, they could have gone to arbitration. Swayman was arbitration eligible. Swayman and the Bruins went to arbitration last year. Swayman did not like that at all. He was quite open about the fact that how he hated the process and wanted to avoid that. Well, that didn't happen. We know that this year, this past season, so 23-24, Swayman and Ullmark had another fantastic season. We knew it was likely going to be the last one with them as a tandem, needing that they had to kind of pick. Both were entering the final, or going into the final year of their contract. Swayman was likely going to be the guy, considering he was a fair bit younger and certainly had, improved his play a lot. And you could say last year, him and Allmark both had good seasons, but I think it's fair to say that they felt Swayman was a bit better and deserved the opportunity to play in the playoffs. Well, and he did phenomenal. I mean, is it his fault the team didn't go further? No, Swayman did more than hold up his end of the bargain. Ullmark did get a little bit of rotation in early in round one, but then eventually that Swayman ran with the ball, and they seemed to be like, okay, this is kind of the way we're going here. The future is kind of the writing on the wall for Ullmark to depart, Swayman to stay and be their guy. And well, here we are. Ullmark ended up getting traded ahead of free agency. Of course, with Linus Ullmark's contract, he had some trade protection where he could block some teams. They had a deal sorted out with Ottawa. Ottawa was not on his trade list, so they could trade him to Ottawa without his permission. And to be honest, it sounded like he probably would have went there anyway. But at the same time, they didn't have that chance that he would say no. So they felt like if they don't do this deal now and they drag it on and his list gets updated on July 1st, which would have happened, maybe he gets wind of what's going down. Maybe he puts Ottawa on his list so he can play hardball. And even if he ends up saying yes, it could still really drag things on and have a major impact on how a trade could ultimately end up going down. So they pulled the trigger on an Ullmark trade well before having anything anywhere near, close on a Swayman contract extension, giving Swayman ultimately more leverage. So they felt like they were going to lose leverage on Ullmark by not doing the deal, waiting on the trade, but that ultimately they gave Swayman the leverage by doing it. So it was one or the other. It was kind of a situation where they were in danger of losing leverage with one of those guys no matter what happened. So, of course, we went through the whole offseason. Here we are in training camp, still no deal. We've had reports that Swayman is looking to reset the goalie market and is rumored to be looking for somewhere around $10 million on a long-term deal. So the Bruins made some quotes today and some comments that were surprising. So Cam Neely, the team president, basically called out Swayman and saying that while he did not really want to get into the details of the ask from Swayman's camp, he said that he had 64 million reasons why I'd be playing right now. So that basically tells us they're offering Swayman $64 million. If you do the math, it sure sounds a lot like an 8-year deal at $8 million per season. I think they'd love to lock up Swayman on an 8-year deal, and obviously 8 times 8 is 64. Now, I've seen some people say, well, maybe it's shorter term, bigger money. I don't know if that's the case. If they wanted to offer Swayman $64 million on a lesser term, I think this deal would be done right now. If they want to give him that much money and walk him to free agency, I don't know why he wouldn't take that. So to be completely honest here, I think it's an 8x8 by the Bruins on the table, and Swayman and his camp and his agent Louis Gross feel like it's not enough, essentially. So Neely would not get into what's being asked, but he did say that he was quite surprised by the ask, which, like I said, is rumored, according to NHL insiders and what they've been able to get leaked out, somewhere in that $10 million range. So ultimately, they said as well that they believe what his ask is and what they believe his comparables are two different things. So they're looking at some, I'm sure, other goalie contracts that have been recently signed, and they're saying this is what you're comparable to, and they're like, no. So this deal, if it were to be signed by Swayman, would make him the 5th highest paid goaltender in the NHL, behind Sergei Bobrovsky, who's making $10 million. Vasilevsky, just under $10 million. I think it's 9.5. Then you get Hellebuck and Sorokin. So this would essentially be just a hair under Ilya Sorokin. Now, Andrei Vasilevsky is the only one of those 4 goaltenders that signed as a pending RFA. The other 3 goaltenders were set to be UFA. So the RFA years and the UFA years do kind of have different values when teams are negotiating these longer-term contracts and they're buying up years of service. So at the same time, it's not a complete, apples-to-apples scenario here, but it's close enough that, you would think that, being paid comparable to a Connor Hellebuck or an Ilya Sorokin are pretty much right in line there with what his accomplishments have been. In theory, should be acceptable, or, there shouldn't be such a big gap, right? Well, that's, I guess, where we're wrong, because obviously Swayman and his agent see things differently. Don Sweeney, the GM of the club, did ultimately go on to say that he felt that ultimately the Bruins are a better team with Swayman. And he said that he thinks that Swayman and the Bruins are both hurt by this negotiation dragging on so long in this regard, and that he'll continue to try to find a settling point to get it done. They said as of right now, they believe that Jonas Korpisalo will indeed be their starter on opening night. At this point in training camp, with the preseason action we've seen, Brandon Busey is the number 2, and he's kind of had his fair share of struggles, I think, the little bit I've seen of him. So, is their goaltending as strong as it would be if Swayman was there? No, it's not. Is Jonas Korpisalo the answer? You hope he can kind of hold them in it. And I know that the Bruins are a pretty well-structured team, and that in theory, him being able to put up better numbers than what he did in Ottawa last year, even if he himself doesn't really improve a whole lot, is theoretically possible and just moderately likely, I think, because the Bruins have better structure and are better defensively. So it should cut down on the number of changes against, in theory. So, that alone, plus, you don't know what Korpisalo's done for, off-season work, what the Bruins goalie coaches can find to help him with. And, if you look at his season in Ottawa last year, it's not a complete blip. It's not. 3 of the past 4 years, his stats have not been very good. He really only had that one run with the Kings after getting traded to LA from Columbus, where he did a lot better. And LA was one of the teams, or league's, better defensive teams. They were running that 1-3-1. Like, it really cut down on the chances against. It kind of inflated his numbers. He got a big raise, and now here we are. Now, like I said, it's what he'll be in Boston, and in all honesty, my gut feeling is that it's going to be somewhere between what we've seen in Ottawa and what we've seen in LA. I don't think it's going to be as bad as Ottawa. I don't think it's going to be as good as LA. And the team in front of them ultimately will dictate a lot of the team's success by how strong they can play in front of them. But, he's looked okay in the preseason, but it's been a couple of appearances. It's early yet. You hope that he can hold them in it, or this is going to really swing the leverage back to Swayman. If the Bruins get off to a good start and Korpisalo's playing well, then ultimately it's going to kind of reduce the pressure on Boston's side to get him in there. But if the Bruins are struggling out of the gate and Korpisalo's not playing well, it's going to go the other way. And there's going to be more pressure on the Bruins to get Swayman done, even if they've got to overpay a bit or get it figured out. So at the end of the day, they had an opportunity to go to arbitration. They chose not to. But arbitration ultimately gets compared to being like going to court, essentially, because both sides are arguing, right? The players are arguing why he should be paid more. The team is arguing why he should be paid less. That's how it goes. It's a tough situation because as a player, you're hearing about everything that the team sees as a fault or a weakness or what have you, and why they should pay you less than what you want. It can be really, really tough mentally to hear and go through that. And like I've said before, I did a study. It was a couple of years ago now, so we'll have to update it here at some point. But ultimately, I went back like about 10 years and went through all the arbitration cases. And there was, I think, 8 out of 10 or something, about for 8 out of every 10, because there wasn't, I'm not sure how many there were, but it was around 80% of them that within 2 years, a player wasn't with the team anymore because relationship breakdown. So this could, either put the pressure on Swayman to be like, yeah, you know what, I need to get this done, and he'll have a change of heart and sign today, tomorrow, and get it done. Or it's going to piss him off that much more, and he's really going to double down and be like, no, you guys brought me to arbitration last year. You're not coming anywhere close to what my ask for demands are on a new contract now. Could it lead to a trade request? You have to think that at this point, I'm not going to go out there and say, yeah, the Bruins are trading him. I don't think they want to. They definitely don't want to. And the other part that would make it challenging is that his agent or, the negotiation process, we'd have to find a team that's willing to meet his demands and give the Bruins a decent return. He's an RFA. He does have a decent amount of the leverage right now, but it's not that simple. But could they, instead maybe agree on a shorter term contract just to get him in there and Swayman say, yeah, you know what, I'll sign, but I'm not signing long term because I don't see myself as a long term Bruin anymore because you guys have really kind of, upset me here and how you view me. Either way, this has a major impact on the relationship. I mean, could a long term deal still get done and be done soon? I wouldn't rule it out, but it does seem like going to the public court of appeal here by the Bruins, that it could backfire. I don't know. I mean, ultimately, it feels to me like they're trying to turn the fan base on him, to put the pressure on him. And if if social media and everything's flooded with Swayman's greedy or, those types of comments, maybe they're trying to hope he'll cave and be like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I got to sign for whatever I can get, and get it done. I don't know. But I tell you, this certainly surprised me to hear them talking so publicly and almost shaming him for not signing their offer. Now, not saying that the offer that they're making him isn't good. It's very good. The argument against Swayman is that he's been a very good goaltender, but he's been in a tandem his entire NHL career, not playing a full NHL schedule as the number one guy. So can you take what you've been doing as a smaller sample size every year, add 20, 25, 30 games to it and continue to play at that high level and then have more success in the playoffs? For the numbers he's looking for, you would expect him to lead you to a Stanley Cup. And will that be likely? Can he do that? That's why the Bruins have their reluctance right now to go there, is because they don't feel like he's done enough as a number one to get that kind of deal at $10 million. To get an 8x8 after being in a tandem, to be honest, I think it's a pretty reasonable deal. I don't really see the Bruins going up a whole lot more on that offer. And at the same time, Swayman and his agent, Louis Gross, who's notorious for holdouts here, I don't know that they're going to back down on much either. So it's really hard to say how this is going to go. It's really difficult to say. I just have to think that the comments from the Bruins today were surprising, and it's going to impact the relationship. And I do wonder long term if it's going to lead to an exit from the Bruins a lot sooner than we ever thought. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, we don't know how Swayman feels about everything that was said, but it's some pretty, unusual tactics here. We're basically in a court of public appeal, which is essentially arbitration without an arbitrator. Instead, they're using the public to kind of weigh in here. It's kind of negotiating through the media. It's kind of weird. It's not a common tactic, but we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts. Are the Bruins being fair? who's kind of the main at fault here for not getting this deal done? Is Swayman asking for way too much? Is it going to lead to an early exit from Boston, whether it be a trade or whether it be him signing a short-term deal and leaving as a UFA? How is this going to play out? Because it's certainly have to think after last year's arbitration and now this, that the relationship has to be rocky at best. Let me know what you think in the comments and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.